Hello and welcome to this episode of Stories of Hope by Kangaroo Minds. I'm Vedika and today we have with us Sandeep Saib. Sandeep is a suicide survivor, a prolific lived experience mental health advocate, a mental health first aider, a philanthropist, and a public speaker. Having been diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, body dysmorphic disorder, and OCD, Sandeep shares her personal recovery journey to help support people, educate them, and empower others. Sandeep also volunteers and collaborates with various charities and organizations in various capacities to continue helping make a difference. Before we begin to hear more from Sandeep about her lived experience and her story, we would like to put out a trigger warning for our audiences. If at any point during this conversation, should you find yourself feeling triggered or distressed, we urge you to take a step back and look after yourself. Should you need any additional support resources, you can also find them on our website. And now, without taking up much time, let's hear more from Sandeep. Sandeep, welcome to the conversation. It's so nice to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Vidika, for inviting me, and thank you so much for arranging this very much needed discussion. And all the way from London as well. So it's great to kind of collaborate on this, and it's just been an honor and a privilege to have this chat. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, Sandeep. And I know for viewers who are not familiar with your story or who haven't had the chance to watch your documentary, I think this is going to be further more inspiring for them, and also to sort of remind people, that there is hope and that things do get better. So, on that note, over to you.
Thank you so much. So for those that are listening or will be watching it later on, this conversation is all about mental health and well-being and looking after yourself, and what more we could all be doing to make sure that mental health and suicide prevention is everyone's business. It does not discriminate. So as Vidika mentioned from the onset, hi, I am Sandeep, and I am a living experience mental health advocate, and I've got personal experience of mental ill health. I'm still on that road to recovery, going through an eating disorder called anorexia nervosa, body dysmorphic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and a suicide survivor where I tried to take my own life in August 2014. 2016 was my turning point, I guess. That's where I found my calling. And that's when I turned such a negative experience in my life with my mental ill health into something good, into something positive, with the aim to help others and help save lives, essentially, no matter who you are. So for me, and being a British Sikh Asian woman in the 21st century, still dealing with mental ill health, it has not been an easy journey, which is why I really want to emphasize it's a healing recovery journey. It's a slow process. There is no magic wand, unfortunately, but the best advice that I've been given and that I live by and stand true to and always advocate is the fact that you are your own best therapist.
So, Sandeep, you've touched upon briefly, what the turning point was, but for our audiences, do you want to tell us a little bit about, what has been sort of, your journey with your mental health and through recovery?
So my journey has not been easy. It for me personally, it has stemmed from my childhood since I was 3, 4 years old, and it has stayed with me. All these thoughts that I have around my eating, my weight, my body image, and feeling very vulnerable and very depressed with the way I looked, and always thinking about what other people think of me. and always having that in the back of my mind. My values are and have always been closely aligned to what other people think of me, as opposed to my own self values and what I believe to be true. So, to be honest with you, it's been conflictual, and I've always been in this battle between irrational and rational thinking since I was 3, 4 years old. This way of thinking with my eating and my weight has been there, like I said, since I was young. It exasperated in my teenage years, then into my adult years, and I'm 35 years old now, and it's still with me. So, in addition to what I mentioned here, Vidika, around it being the irrational, rational thoughts, it's been, in short, a friend and a foe. My eating disorder, my BDD, my OCD, these three key elements have been my friend. It's the friend, it's a comfort blanket for me. It's my coping mechanisms. It's my rituals that I have in place to keep me safe. And for years on end, I've just kept it to myself. For years on end, I've masked it. And for those that don't know, in South Asian communities, connecting with families, being in environments like that, food is very important. Food is an integral part of connecting. Being seen and being present and having pride in your family and your family name, that is very important and valued in our community. Being closely knit with our extended family is very, very important. So, these cultural values have been instilled in the South Asian community for generations, hasn't it, Vidika?
Yes.
And we've, in addition to that, have gone through historical trauma on top of that. But like my mental ill health, and like so many of my ancestors and my generation, there's so much intergenerational trauma, and it's just been swept underneath the carpet. People don't talk about it. South Asian communities don't talk about it. Why? For some of the reasons, it's the stigma. It's the fear of being treated differently. It's the fear of tarnishing your family name. You won't get married. Marriage will be virtually impossible.
Mm.
You won't be able to uh, fully be appreciated and respected in your community because of those misconceptions and stigma that surrounds you. Labels begin to appear, name calling begins to appear, and the list goes on and on and on. And as you can see, it's been a complex world to unpick. It has been a complex world. The South Asian community has been a complex world to unpick. Then throw in mental ill health and suicide.
Mm.
That's where it gets complex in our community.
No, I completely agree with you, that there is so much intergenerational trauma, and South Asian communities, unfortunately, do not recognize mental health as a real problem, especially mental ill health. So when we talk about, people struggling, and then that also comes down to, just issues around representation. We feel that this is not something that happens to South Asian people, this is a more Western problem. And I think
Mm,
it's interesting that you touched upon that. And I know earlier as well, you mentioned about, your identity and your faith, as
mm,
a British Sikh woman. So, where do you think that has had an impact on your journey as well? Because you did touch upon how, your background, your upbringing contributed to the development of mental ill health. But how do you think that's also added to, everything that you've experienced then and now?
mm. A very good question, Vidika, because where And in addition to having eating disorders, BDD and OCD, on regarding where I try to take my own life, it was in my own place of worship. It was in a gurdwara. And off the back of that, it's cliche to say this, but I do feel like I have a second life.
Mm.
Like I have a reason to be again.
Mm.
And I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason. Whether it's good or not good, there is a reason for that. So the two biggest support pillars for me personally is the two F's, family and faith. It's definitely strengthened. And there were times, honestly, hands on heart, where I actually neglected both of them. I just listened to that irrational voice. And there are times where I still do, but I'm more, I think I'm better. I want to say I'm better in picking up that negative self talking and nipping it in the bud and doing more to add and improve my well-being toolkit. But it hasn't been easy. For me personally, I've also been um, I've had direct experience of stigma and misconceptions, but I've also heard a lot about that being said to other people close to me in my own community. So a, it's been conversations that have been um, spoken about like it's normal, and like it's normal to talk about, um, for example, beauty standards. Um, the fairer you are equates to how beautiful you are. Thus, whether you're more likely to get married and things like that. So, colorism is a huge issue in our culture. I must say, I remember when I was young and I got given a cream and I thought it was for my acne because I suffered from severe acne when I was young. Turns out it's actually a skin lightening cream from India. It just goes to show, and that's just a example, that things like this, it's heavily ingrained in our South Asian community, but it's also within the media. It's also within the beauty industries. In the news, in social media. What is beauty? Um, what does that look like? And it's been a tough one. It's definitely been a tough one. And I also wanted to mention the point around intergenerational trauma. Now, take for example, in the 1970s, early 1970s, the Ugandan Asian expulsion. My mum, she was born in Uganda. My dad, he was born in Mombasa. Now, my mum was relatively young. She was just, I think, 2, 3 years old. And she tells me till this day how tough it was for her to be born in Uganda. But then, as soon as she was near enough born, herself, and her family had to leave the country, had to just go with such short notice under the dictatorship of Idi Amin. Now, my mum is okay and has come to that comfortable space to talk about it with me. But I know fully well that if I was to speak about it with our with my grandma or my nan, for example, they will find it a struggle. They wouldn't know how to find the words to put it into sentences to communicate, because it was traumatic. They only did what they had to do in that very moment. But years have gone by and they've just accepted it. And that's just one historical event. That's one example. But these emotions, feelings, and thoughts, that we are hugely impacted on without even knowing has affected us, and we've just accepted it for what it is, and no one talks about it. So I definitely think that we've, in short, come very far, but there's still a lot more work to do, especially in the eating disorder area, and especially in suicide prevention and mental health and well-being generally. I'd say we really need to do so much more. And going back to my point around faith,
Mm.
places of worship, faith leaders, for example, need to get on board with this agenda, because it's everyone's business. Everyone's business.
No, I completely agree with you, whether it's about talking about the responsibility that we all have, irrespective of our positions or irrespective of where we come from, because as you said, mental health, mental ill health doesn't discriminate, but also the entire aspect of South Asian cultures, whether it's about our preoccupation with food, whether it's about our ideals of, fairness and thinness and, diet culture. And of
Mm,
course, now with the media, it's not just something that's remained a South Asian thing. It's unfortunately getting perpetuated in many more countries. And of course, that does contribute to a lot of mental health issues. But
mm.
yeah, but coming back to you, you were talking about sort of how 2016 was the turning point for you. But do you want to tell us a little bit about, sort of the highs and lows that you experienced in your journey, probably leading up to that point?
In relation to 2016, before my turning point, there was a lot of lows than highs. Lows because I was at the lowest point in my life. And it wasn't a case where it was just one day I woke up and I felt awful on that particular day. It's years and years of these thoughts and behaviors and feelings that I attributed to my eating, my body, my weight, feeling so low about other things, other aspects in my life that weren't going well. And I just had no other means, no alternatives, no line of support. And I felt so lost. And I was in my own thoughts and I was thinking tunnel vision. And through all these processes and ways of thinking, I neglected my family, my friends. I used to get angry a lot, angry because I didn't know where to put all that energy in. I didn't have no outlet essentially, and I was struggling. I was struggling in silence, and I didn't speak to no one about it. And like I said, I went about my day, and I was working full time as well. At that point, I kept it silent. I did not say anything. And to be honest with you, there was a point where I said to myself that there is nothing wrong with me.
Mm,
There is nothing wrong with me. I actually retaliated in the early days, actually. I said, there's nothing wrong with me. They're just saying that for the sake of saying it. And it's only when my mum and dad sat me down and they vocally said, we are seeing a change in you. We have seen a change in you. We've noticed X, Y, and Z. These are the red flags to us. We want to do what we can as parents to help and support you. We'll come with you to the doctors and have you checked out. It might not be anything, but let's check it out. And it's just that hunch going with their parental instincts. And I said to myself that I'm going to do it for them. And that has been my way of thinking. I'm going to do this to keep my family happy. I'm going to go for that doctor's appointment, or I'm going to try that therapy for the first time, or I'm going to give those antidepressants a go because I want to do this, but not for myself, for my family. because I've seen firsthand what my actions and how my actions, more importantly, affected my family. And I didn't want to upset them anymore. So, in short, a lot of lows, and it's all in here. The world hasn't changed. My the way I am, my shell hasn't changed. My family hasn't changed. It's my mentality, it's my brain that is tricking me or has tricked me in thinking irrationally, thinking that other people are thinking about me thinking bad about myself. So it's a lot of volatile internal negative dialogue, but everything outside stays the same. And that has amazed me looking back on it. And therapy helped me realize that. It got all those thoughts that I was thinking up there out, vocalizing and sharing. Very powerful stuff. So a lot of lows to answer your question, Vidika, unfortunately. But 2016 was, I guess, that turning point in beginning on the highs and championing the highs and reminding myself that I'm more than just my mental ill health, that there's more to me to offer than being diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, for example. There is more qualities to me, and more for me to give to the world, essentially.
Right. And I think, that's the whole thing that, which makes you so inspiring, Sandeep, is how you sort of, use the experiences that you have to now be like an advocate for mental health, for suicide prevention, and, sort of to help and support people along their journey. But
Yeah.
when we talk about, everything that you went through, would you say that there were some early warning signs, which could have been picked up? Because you did touch upon, your parents sort of pointing out that they had noticed that things were different and that you were behaving different and, something might be wrong, but very often people in these positions don't know what
Mm,
to look out for. And like how you mentioned that you didn't feel that you were struggling, or there were days where you felt that you were fine and, there was nothing wrong with you.
I fully believe that. Yeah.
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 There are a lot of people who may not even recognize, that they might be struggling, or someone even in their lives might be struggling. So if you want to just talk from your own experience that, what were some early warning signs which, maybe could have been picked up earlier?
Mm. A very, very good question, Vidika. The red flags. I'm going to name a few, but know that it's not there. There is so much more to this list. But some of the red flags for someone that's struggling with their mental ill health. So, take for example me. Number one was withdrawing, not showing up at family functions,
Mm,
being late to work, for example, not showing up at social drinks, not taking myself out of the room, not coming back home or coming back late. Withdrawing could be physical, like those examples, or mentally, absent minded, absenteeism. Take, for example, a conversation, a
mm,
social conversation. I'm there, I'm present, I'm doing my utmost to listen to the conversation and what's being had and what's being said, but I'm not wholeheartedly there. I'm not wholeheartedly present because my mind is running 200 miles per hour,
mm,
thinking, wondering what they are thinking of me. What is that person in the right hand corner in the far room there thinking about me? What are they seeing? What flaws are they picking out now? Oh no, they're noticing this, the lighting's, oh, this. So you get in your own head.
mm,
So there's withdrawing, physical sense and the mind sense, the mentality sense, the mind, from a mental point of view, mental side point of view. I think the second red flag is anger outbursts, even broadening that to behavior changes. So for me, anger was a huge one. With eating disorders, the malnutrition is out of sync. I'm still going through this and learning, but body starvation, for example, all these different things where you are depriving your body mentally and physically of nutrition, water, food, all these essentials that keep your body going. Your body's an engine and it needs to survive. When I didn't have that energy, when I starved my body, that had a direct impact on my anger.
Mm.
You know that whole term hangry?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly, I guess that's the way I guess I can best describe it.
Mm.
But it's 10 times, even 100 times worse than that. You get anger, and you get angry at the little things. It's the little things that can anger you. So take, for example, for me personally, if I did eat anything, it's getting the wrappers and throwing them, disposing them away right away. But seeing them there a day later angers me and frustrates me. It sets off that guilt. Why did I have that?
Mm.
What an idiot I am. Why did I consume that? So there's that self anger, but then there's also that anger on other people unintentionally, and you don't mean it. But I get angry at my mum for taking away the rubbish, for example, removing that guilt of her seeing all the bad things I've just done, all the food that I did consume. The guilt then trips in. So for me, anger was a big part. Self anger at myself and anger at loved ones close to me. So anger is a big one. Third one also is changes in the physical appearance. So what I mean by that is drastic loss of weight, what you see physically. It could be drastic loss of weight or putting on weight.
Mm.
It could be a change in face shape. It could be body structure. It could be um, even the bone density as well, hunching, doing these things. Um, you know, for me, bones and fragility, bone fragility is a big one. Bone density is a big one. When those that are starving their body, their bones do feel it.
Mm.
I felt it, and I still feel it, where it has an effect. You're starving your body's trying to kick into overdrive, and it's saying to you that, and the body's smart, and it's saying to you that you need to protect yourself.
Mm.
So behaviors around the body, changes in the body language as well, hunching, all these different things to appear smaller, to
Mm.
appear skinnier. Because I've always had this mentality that if I hunch, if I hunch over, if I keep my arms closer, if I do that, I appear smaller to other people, thus skinnier, thus slimmer, beautiful, presentable, perfect in that way, or close to perfect. And I've still struggled with that thought. I still struggle with that. Even whilst we're having this Zoom, I'm mindful of the posture here. But I know with starvation, it has that effect on body and the way the body looks. And I've seen that change in me. So physical appearance is a third big red flag. When people are changing physically before your eyes, keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on that person. I'd also say another red flag um, is sometimes resorting to other um, other means. So what I mean by that is alcohol usage, drug usage, antidepressants, but depressants that are of higher dosage, perhaps, or you're having that more frequent, and or you're more reliant on that. So it's looking at behaviors around that as well to be mindful of. Sometimes or most times when people are struggling, they just want to numb the pain.
Mm,
They want to stop the noise that's going on in their mind, mentally and physically. But they know to suppress those emotions, to quieten down that noise temporarily, they can easily resort to alcohol, drugs, excessive use of antidepressants. They can take it above and beyond their what their doctors subscribed for them. Um, so it's being conscious of that,
right.
and especially if they do have a history of those substances. So it's being mindful and conscious of the usage of that. So those are a few red flags. And there's so many more that I can, we could have a separate chat about this, Vedika, in terms of that. But those are a few.
No, I completely agree with you. Whether as you said, I think the essential thing to look out for is change, whether it's change in moods, whether it's change in behaviors, whether it's change in habits, whether it's change in, social interaction. And that could
Mm,
go either way, right? On either of the extremes, as
mm,
you sort of pointed out. But
mm.
coming back to things that helped. You did talk about faith and family being very important pillars of your recovery as well as therapy. But would you like to talk about other things that, you found helpful? Or, what could also be some self-care tips you might want to share with anybody else who might be in a similar place?
Yeah, I definitely. This is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. To your point around highs, this is one of the highs.
Mm,
The biggest high for me, number one, is 2016, the doors opening to the world of advocacy for
mm,
mental health and well-being. For me, that's the biggest self-care outlet that anyone could give me. And like I said, I've sprung into this world by accident purely because I've got that personal lived experience, and I was just desperate to find the answers, find the solutions to make me feel better.
mm,
There's no magic wand, like I said, and it's definitely a slow healing journey, and I'm a work in progress. But number one for me, self-care, advocacy work,
mm,
supporting others, helping others help me. End of. In terms of other self-care outlets, the two big F's, family and faith. On family, in our culture, in our community,
mm,
family is key. Family is the heart of everything. And for me, they are my huge pillar of support. We have a family positive and negative trusted circle where we take ourselves away from the home environment, go to a coffee shop, and have a what we call a positive and a negative session, where we have an open dialogue, a frank conversation around what has been working for you, what hasn't been working, and how we can, as a family, collectively support you. So it's amazing to have a forum with your own family to talk openly about anything,
mm,
not just your struggles, not just about mental ill health, everything that makes you you, that makes you human. And like I said, you're more than just the sum of your parts, you're more than your labels and your diagnoses. Um, so that has been really helpful for our family, not just for me, but it's been very cathartic and therapeutic for my mum, for my dad, for my brother, and now for my new sister-in-law who has joined the family. So things like that, it's precious moments with your family that means a lot, and I neglected them. So I'm trying to, and I'm still in the process of rebuilding that with my family, and they've been my huge self-care outlet. Third one, faith. going to the Gurdwara, place of worship, for me, that's everything. It has reconnected me to my faith, my spiritual outlet, me to find time for me and reconnect with the higher powers that be, really, which has been phenomenal. Thirdly, I like to do a lot of solo trips.
Mm.
That time for me. I love my family, but I do need time for myself, and this is time for me. So I love doing that. I love traveling by myself. I love experiencing the world and seeing it for what it is, because my God, there's a lot of beauty out there. And last but not least, tied into beauty, um, being really in tune with your five senses. So what I do to set myself up for the day or any time I get, especially in the morning, just sit in my room and go through the five senses, what I can see, what I can taste, what I can smell, all these different things, and do that for a good few minutes. It keeps me grounded, and it's a great technique for me to get ready for the day. And I found that's been really fruitful for me. And I find time to do that any chance I get. So I definitely advocate for those self-care tips and jigsaw puzzles as well. I love doing that. Keeps my mind occupied in DIY in and around the house. So those are a few self-care tips from me to you, and feel free to give it a go as well and let us know how you get on.
And I think that's, those are really helpful because, as you said, there's a whole range of different things people can do. So whether it's, especially in South Asian cultures, right, where family and faith plays such a huge role in our lives. And it's really interesting how you were able to sort of attune that into your recovery journey and as well as, moving forward from there. But we spoke about South Asian culture, and one of the things you did talk about was stigma. So, did you ever, encounter any stigma personally, or, have there been things that people have said to you along your journey, or, when you were struggling, which have both been helpful and unhelpful?
Yeah, very good question. I think what I've learned is words hurt. Words for me have stuck to me like a leech, and they have been negative. So I've been called fat. I've been called, yeah, you're the fat auntie. You're fat. You're chubby. Um, you're a Hoover. You will mop this up, and all these different things. And the list goes on, but those are a few. And for me, this has been words that have been said to me since I was young, and those words, like I said, have hurt me, and they stuck to me like a leech, and I can't seem to be a duck off a water spout, i.e., I can't let it go. I can't shift this, and I I put it to myself to blame. It's me that feels that. And I feel like I have to change. I do the changing, not that individual that said the word or words. It's me that has been at the end of those words. And it's me that feels like I have to prove it to myself and prove it to them, that I'm not that person, that I don't look like this, that I need to work on this. If I don't do it, then I will get more backlash. I will get more negativity. And I'm scared. There was also that scare, being fearful of what people are going to be thinking and saying. I was scared, Vidika. I was so scared. Even young toddlers as well. I was scared as to what they were going to say about me. And kids being kids, they just say it as it is, don't they? No filter.
Yeah.
I was scared. What they're going to say, what they're going to be thinking. So for me, the biggest one is words, language. being said in my own community, for
Mm.
my own people. And that's what hurt the most. That it wasn't any Tom, Dick, and Harry. It was in my own community, Vidika, very close to home. And that's what I guess hurt the most. That is people that you know. And I, till this day, can't shift that. And I'm sorry to say, after so many therapy sessions and counseling sessions and trying to techniques to reframe my mind and thinking positively, yes, it has worked to a certain degree, but I need to practice. I need to keep on practicing. And I find myself still seeping into that behavior or thinking back as to what I could have done, should have done. So there's a lot of self-blame, self-guilt. I should know better. It's my fault. So yeah, words hurt. Words hurt. And I think, in short, if there's anything that we could and should be doing as a key takeaway for those tuning in here, and those that listen later on, we need to be much more careful with the words we use and how we convey that to anyone, not just our loved ones. We need to use words and use words with kindness and empathy, and know that we just need to be careful in how we say things to individuals. You can't walk their shoes, they can't walk your shoes. You will never fully understand what they're going through, but you can start with having an empathetic conversation with them, and words in that conversation and the language that comes with it is very, very important. Those are, for me personally, things that people will remember, people will listen to. So words matter.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's interesting because we just had a conversation come out about empathy and how to cultivate empathy, especially within a mental health context. But when we talk about, things that people say, things that
Mm,
people imply, because especially in our culture, a lot of things are implied. And I absolutely agree because it's not about what strangers tell you, because somewhere you will be preoccupied with thoughts that, oh, people are judging me, or what are they thinking about me. But I think the words that sort of stick to you the most are people you're close to, or
mm,
related to, whether or not you're emotionally close to them or not. But simply because our culture places so much importance on family, sometimes you feel that, hey, these are the people who should be getting me the most. But unfortunately, sometimes that is where most of the harm does come from, right? Whether it's about how casually we body shame people, or how quickly we dismiss mental health. And
mm,
I think you might have seen that as well, that this is not real, this is a phase, you should snap out of it. Or just using things like, you're being overly dramatic, you're being attention seeking, you know,
mm,
especially even in South Asian cultures, the amount of guilt that is placed onto you, that you're not grateful enough for everything that people do for you. And, that's why you're just coming up with these things. But
mm,
I think, as you said, like, I think we all sort of need to realize, irrespective of whether we come from a South Asian background or not, that sort of the power that our words have and
mm.
how they can both negatively and positively influence people around us.
Yeah, absolutely. And your point around just how words can be just interpreted
Mm.
to people in different ways, in different aspects of their life, and words are words, and that's just what it is. But it's how you share that and communicate that. That's where we just need to be careful with as well. Yeah.
I think, we've touched upon a lot of topics with you today, Sandeep, ranging from the power of kindness, empathy, the role of faith, sort of exploring, where our identities come in, especially when we talk about mental health, when we talk about recovery, as well as, sort of the highs you experience, the lows you experience. But looking back, what would you say have been some of your key learnings along the way?
Learnings, key learnings. I'm still learning. um, Learning so much about me. There's so many things that I've learned, but I'll go by what I'm currently going through now, actually, just to bring it in the present moment. There is a lot of self learning that I'm going through again. I'm always learning. I think the biggest learning for me to date is firstly, you are your own best therapist. You know yourself better than anyone, better than the doctors, better than your mum, better than your dad. You know what you need to do, but sometimes you just don't know how to get from A to B. So I guess what I've learned is holding true to that and not being afraid to ask for help for the additional guidance. If that is your gut instinct, most likely it is true. Listen to it. And if you do need that additional support, raise your hand and say it out loud that, hey, I'm struggling. I need help. Please help me. You have every right to ask for help. And that in itself is a superpower. Super brave. And I've learned that the hard way. So that is the biggest learning. Not being afraid to listen to your gut instinct and knowing that it is perfectly okay to not be okay. Put your hand up and vocalize and say, I am not okay. I am not doing well. I'm actually not having a good day. And this is why. The more we talk about issues, not just struggles, everything, the more we generally talk about what's happening upstairs in our minds, the better. You see, with physical injuries, cuts, bruises, you can see it. Therefore, you can treat it. When it comes to mental health, or mental ill health, whatever's going on in your mind, in your brain, neurologically, you can't see that. So by talking, by vocalizing, by sharing, by communicating, you're making the invisible visible, and that is brave to do. And going back to my point earlier around words and language, it's important to use the right words. It's important to communicate. So don't be afraid to take that step to have those conversations. Yes, it might be uncomfortable the first time around, but I've learned the more you do it, the more you will benefit and that person that's struggling in silence because you've given them that time, that space to be seen, to be heard, and to be respected and understood, even if it's just a little bit. But no, another takeaway is what I've learned is knowing that you're not going to have the solutions for them every single time. You might not have any solution, but don't beat yourself up. You don't need to be a problem solver. You don't need to be the jack of all trades. You're not a therapist. So please don't overburden yourself. Please know that you can say that you've provided options, but know that you have to understand boundaries and know that that person that's struggling has a human right to make their own decisions regarding their overall mental health and well-being. You can be there as a listening ear, yes. You can provide them with options, yes. But you don't have the power within you to solve their problems.
Mm.
And you shouldn't be in a position, or try not to be in a position, where you're in that thinking mode. That's where it gets unhealthy.
Mm.
So boundaries, I've learnt, is very, very important. What I've also learnt is kindness doesn't cost a thing. Self-kindness to yourself, more importantly, remembering to be kind to yourself, giving yourself pat on the back when you do go for those work drinks. Give yourself a pat on the back when you do wear something different than your usual uniform. Give yourself on the back when you actually wake up and get yourself out of the bed and walked out of that house and made your way to work. So it's those small wins, it's the small things, it's a small act of kindness to yourself and thus to other people that makes a huge damn difference. And it doesn't cost a single thing. So I've learned kindness, do not take it for granted. And lastly, you're a work in progress. Keep at it. Keep on that road to recovery and try as much as you can to be hopeful. And I keep a gratitude journal or positive affirmations and quotes and reminding yourself that you are doing well. You are doing great. And taking stock of that and remembering that. Yeah, so those are the few.
I absolutely love all the things that you touched upon, right from talking about how it's brave to seek help, because a lot of times we feel that we should be able to figure this out ourselves. Just asking for help feels like a lot, or it feels like I'm weak, I'm not strong enough, that I need to take someone else's help to solve my issues. But I think it is so, so brave to own up and be like, you know what, I'm not okay.
Mm,
Especially in a world or in a culture which doesn't entirely understand mental health and mental ill health. I think just standing up for yourself, being like, I need help, it's also a huge way to even counter the stigma that exists, right? To
mm,
normalize those conversations. And of course,
abs-
if you touched upon things like boundaries, just being kind to ourselves, being very patient with ourselves as well. I think sometimes we forget that. And I think, as they say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
correct. Yeah. And I think the biggest self care is we need more people that look like us, Vidika. You, yourself, me, we are just one people. We're two advocates here
Mm.
from a South Asian background, people of color that advocate in this space. We need more South Asian mental health advocates to come forward to we want them to champion and be able to use their voices to help others as well. So we need more people of color to come forward. We need to create and continue to amplify our voices. We have every right to do so. And mental health and well-being shouldn't just be a white person's problem. It's everyone's problem. So we need to do more to have ourselves
Yeah.
represented, to come for ourselves to come out of the woodwork and have that confidence and be a voice for the voiceless and say, you know what, hey, I'm brown. I'm from a say South Asian community. This is my identity, my culture. This is where I stand. And did you know I also struggle with mental ill health? But you know what? I'm here. I'm brave enough to say that. And this is my tribe. This is what I call home. And we need more people like us, Vidika, and encourage them, help them, support them to share their journey because my God, they've got a lot to share and a lot to be proud of. And we can do a lot more to collaborate and help each other in that space. Definitely.
And I absolutely agree. Like, we should take, we should have seats at the table for people from different backgrounds, just so that we can also remind people in South Asian communities or other communities as well that it's okay to struggle, that and how important is representation. And I'm so glad that, we had you here, we had this conversation, because just sort of looking at the various hats that you wear, but also looking at sort of all the intersectionalities of, our own identities. That is also something a lot of people will be able to recognize. A lot of different frames of reference right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Dual identity, all these different things, intersectionality, the list goes on really. But the more you know yourself,
Mm,
the more your own well-being toolkit evolves with you and alongside you. That can only do you good,
absolutely.
isn't it? But sharing that's where it gets even more powerful. When you're sharing that with others.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sandeep, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So
Oh, I love this.
to wrap up our conversation today, I want to ask you that if you could share any parting words or some piece of advice to anybody who's watching or listening to this who might be having a hard time, what would that be?
I always get asked this question, Vidika, and I always have so many things that I want to say, so many things. But the one thing that sticks with me that I really want to advocate to you all listening is please, please find the courage within you. If you are struggling, whatever you're going through, please don't wait till breaking point. Please talk it out. Please communicate. Share it with a loved one. Talk it out. The more you talk about it, the more that individual can help and support you. So, talking is powerful. Please don't take it for granted. Start up a conversation,
Mm,
check in with a friend, text a work colleague, for example. Maybe go and visit that family member and see how they're doing, or meet up for a coffee. Please connect, please talk as much as you can, because, like I said, we need to make the invisible visible. And the only way we can do that is using this talking as much as we can. Yeah.
I think that's been such an informative and enriching session, Sandeep. And I'm so glad we had this chat, because I know, we've spoken about your story, but we've also touched upon so many important themes around mental health, whether it's, like things to look out for, whether it's how to support people, or whether it's just simply, the power of our words and being kind. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your experiences with all our viewers and our audiences. And for anybody who's watching or who's been listening to this, if know that if you're having a hard time with your mental health, there is always help out there, and there's always hope that things do get better. So you don't need to go through this alone. You don't need to struggle in silence, even as Sandeep said. So please look after yourself. Please prioritize your mental health. And until we meet again, please stay well and stay healthy. Thank you.